What is the deal with what's implied by a group of people who relies largely on grains for their nutrition? Hi, in case you're new to this channel, I'm Slick Nick, your personal keto bro. And no, I'm not a doctor, not a dietitian, a nutritionist, a personal trainer, just some random guy in Tennessee, less than 2 months away from my 40th birthday. And this year in 2021, I really want to get down to that 17% body fat. My goal a year ago, and it's funny because I started going to the gym exactly a year ago this week. But I went from, and I dropped over 20 pounds of fat. So largely I could have been closer to 22, 23% body fat. Now I think I'm closer to 20, getting closer to that 17% body fat. But here's the concept. This is what I believe. I believe that grains are basically poor people's food. People who have less access to spending money for nutrition are going to end up eating grains, and that's a sign that they are poor. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, like, oh, look at the poor people, we look down on them. No, what I'm saying is, like, especially in America, we see this. States like Mississippi, who are known for being the most obese, well, they have access to grains, processed grains, but they don't have access to fruits and vegetables, for example, like produce. They also don't have access to unprocessed meat, for example, either. I mean, even for me, I eat bacon, but I will only eat bacon if there's no nitrates, for example. That's the first thing, otherwise I'm not gonna eat it. I'll eat a hot dog, but only a few brands because it has to have the no nitrates, and I'm looking to make sure it doesn't have dextrose in it. But specifically, this goes back to a video I made recently, talking about how I've had my own journey of being kosher for 12 years, and then now I eat bacon. Like, that's weird, why would I? But for me, a lot of it, back when I was kosher and I wouldn't eat pork, it was because in the Bible, the Jewish people were told not to eat it, it was unclean. But what were they eating? What did Jesus eat? He was either eating fish or he was eating bread, but specifically bread is the main focus. Even in the Lord's Prayer, give us this our daily bread. It's constantly talking about bread. The whole concept about communion, take this bread, it symbolizes my body, bread. Because if you're constantly spiking your insulin, you're constantly storing fat. If that's the main staple, so whether it's bread or whether it's rice, whether it's corn, you're spiking your insulin. So the concept is if you have less access to nutrition, specifically financially less access to it, what's going to happen is you're going to be more likely to be storing fat. And it makes sense because the standard American diet, where you're supposed to have the majority of your calories from grains, which I do the opposite of that, the opposite of the pyramid. But if you are constantly eating grains, you're constantly storing fat, and you're not getting enough fat to keep you from being hungry. So it's a vicious cycle. You just keep eating carbs, keep spiking your insulin, probably not actually getting enough protein even, but definitely not enough fat. It's trans fat because it's in the corn chips, the pizza dough, all those things, the Oreos. So this is the epiphany though. It seems that here's what I'm presenting. It's like people who have means to not rely on grains, it's like a status symbol. It's not saying you're filthy rich, but it's a way of saying that you're not poor. If you have access to enough fat and proteins to sustain you, you don't need to constantly be spiking your insulin. It's more like a supplement kind of concept. Well, I don't have enough access to what my body actually needs, which is fat for fuel. 20% of my calories go to my brain. I would love for my brain to have good fat in my body, but I can't. So I'm gonna go ahead and eat these Oreos and these chips and this pasta and this bread, all very processed and constantly spiking my insulin. It's gonna cause fat to store in my body, and that's gonna keep me from starving. So it's interesting because keto is the opposite of that. We shun grains. I don't even really eat beans. So I'm rarely, during my time alive, I was about to say my waking hours, but even during my sleeping hours, my insulin's not being spiked because I'm not eating that. But can't you imagine this demographic discovery that People who don't have enough money to eat, quote, eat healthy, they're eating junk food because junk food's more affordable. But twist ending on this video, I feel that eating keto is not that hard to do if you know what to do. I mean, granted, yes, I pay $5 or more for a carton of eggs because I'm going for the, pasture raised ones. But still, you could even do a dirty keto. You could go with the cheap eggs and have those every day. And you could go with just the cheapest lettuce you could find, at least get some kind of fiber in there. And yeah, you could do processed meats, you could find some without nitrates, but you would just eat less because you're eating less on keto. You're eating during a smaller window and you're eating less food in general because you're focusing on the food that keeps you full and giving your body what it actually needs instead of constantly being hungry and constantly storing fat. So I definitely think that there's a demographic connection here that we're seeing specifically in America of feeding people who have less money more junk, more garbage, more junk food. But if they only knew, I think they could do keto and it not be that expensive. That's what I believe. I think this is a conversation worth exploring further beyond this 6.5 minutes. Your comments belong right here.